You're listening to the Jesus Studio podcast.
And I just felt the Holy Spirit. And I had kind of felt it before, but not massively. I knew when I was crying it was the Holy Spirit. I did know that, but I started feeling it. I could just see black tar being pulled off me one by one. And I was just letting it go. I wasn't holding on to it because I was still holding on to all of this stuff, I think. My hurt, my trauma, my self-harm. It was mine. And I just felt this fire inside for God, and nothing dramatic had happened, but I just wanted to tell everyone because I was on this high like I'd never been on before. It was a high like no drug I'd ever taken. It was this feeling that I was like, I need more, like a drug, but the best drug you've ever been on.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Jesus Studio podcast. Today I'm pleased to invite Annie, my sister, on the podcast. So Annie, introduce yourself for us.
Hi, I'm Annie. I'm 23. I got married this year to Jacob and we have two boys, who are 2 and 4.
Great. Annie, tell us your story and start from the beginning and don't miss anything out.
Okay, I'll try, thank you. So I was born in 2000. I have 3 siblings who are all a lot older than me. So I was born into, my sister was 10 years older, my brother was 14 years older, and my other brother was 18 years older. So I was kind of the accident/surprise, I guess, in the family. We grew up in Thacombe, in a house with our mum and dad, and we all lived there together. I think growing up, I don't remember fully, but I think that the family went to church and I think our mum and dad had a faith always or at some point in their lives. And I remember going to church as a young child, but I mainly remember going with my brothers, not as a whole family, but that might just be my memory kind of not being great. And it was a tiny little church. And I grew up and we had a big garden and mum was a childminder and it was, really lovely. And my mum was my best friend. We did everything together. I literally slept in her bed. I just remember having this great life and being really happy. Then one day, about 2 weeks after my 8th birthday, my mum died quite suddenly. So I later on found out she kind of got ill in around the December and she died in the April. And it was a massive, massive shock to me. I knew she wasn't well, but I didn't know how unwell she was or that she was going to die. And what I remember from the day that she died was being told we were going to pick her up and bring her home. And my friend's mum at the time picked me up and I remember being so excited that we were going to take her home and she was coming home and I'd drawn her a picture and we drove up to the hospital and 2 people who were actually from the church were there. And I remember thinking, that's weird, like why have they come? But they were friends of the family and they took my friend's mum off and I remember some stairs to my left. And my dad came down the stairs and took me up and I remember going, where's mum? When are we going to see mum? And I walked into this room and all my siblings were sat there and my dad said, mum's gone to heaven and she's gone to be with Jesus. And I remember thinking, what? What is going on? Everyone was crying and that didn't mean anything to me really. I kind of knew what it meant. I knew it was bad, but I hadn't even had a pet die, hadn't had anyone in my life die, apart from a little neighbour down the road's husband who was about 100. And I didn't know. I was just like, what does that, what is going on? And I wanted to leave. I just wanted to go home. So my friend's mum took me home and I remember being in the car and saying, don't tell anyone. Please don't tell anyone that this has happened. And I don't know why I felt that. I think I didn't want anyone to know I was different. I didn't want anyone to know this news that had happened. And I remember my friend at the time, obviously he was also kind of 8, the first thing she said when we told her was, were our eyes open or shut? And I didn't go and see her. And I remember thinking, that's a weird thing to ask. Like, it was just this crazy day that I will never forget. And I didn't understand why we were told that we were going to get, or I was told we were going to get her. I didn't understand what was going on. I was asked if I wanted to see her. And again, I didn't know. I don't know if I wanted to see her or not. I think I'm glad I didn't, but I don't know how I would have felt. But I just wanted to go home. And I remember my friend's mum saying, I'm going to make you a cup of tea and you're going to have 2 sugars in it. And then we're going to go to B&Q. And I was like, I don't want to go to B&Q. What if something happens in the car? What if that? And she said, you could live your whole life like that. Come on. And like swept me up. And we went to B&Q. And that was my life. And it was just kind of to me, my whole life changed overnight. I just didn't have a clue. And I didn't understand for a really long time that she wasn't coming back. That was a really big thing to me. So I think I grieve differently each year. So I remember being really, really young and straight after it happened and lying in my bed and praying every night. And I would list everyone that I knew and that I loved and that I cared about. And I would pray that they woke up in the morning and that they would be alive. And I remember doing it every single night and just lying in bed thinking, I hope no one else dies. And I had my mum's picture and it was just really, really hard. And then things kind of obviously fell apart. It was painful. I didn't understand at first what was going on. I went back to school and like I said, I didn't want anyone to know. And I went back and in assembly, the head teacher called me up to the front and told everyone and said, Annie's mum's died. And I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. And I thought, get me out of here, like get me out. And I went back into the class and no one spoke to me because no one knew what to say. We were all these little 8-year-olds and my mum had died. No, it was a tiny little school. There was about 80 people in the whole school. And no, none of these children knew what to say to me. So I was just isolated from that moment, really. My sister went to uni, my brothers moved out eventually, and I was left in this house that was full of life and love and a home, and I was left there with my dad. And my dad worked a lot when I was young. He used to go to work really, really early, come home for dinner and then go back out to work. So I didn't really know him as a dad, really. I knew him, but he was left with me as a young girl. It was just strange. And I spent a lot of time with my friend and her mum and going to different people's houses after school. I remember going to a different friend's every night, or a different person who had obviously said they'd look after me, which is obviously really kind. And just not being welcome. I was welcome, but I didn't feel like I belonged there. I didn't know where I wanted to be. I wanted to be back in the life when my mum was here and everything was okay. And all these people had their mums and dads and these happy families, and I'm there. And even like they'd all get in their own clothes when they got home, and I was stuck in my uniform there, and it wasn't my home, and it was just hard, really hard. And trying to comprehend that my mum was never coming back took me years and years to be able to do. And I think it really affected me. And things started to kind of go downhill, really, with my dad and my relationship. And that was a real struggle. I don't think he knew how to parent me. I don't think he'd necessarily been the main parent for the others, my siblings. And my mum was, what I remember, the greatest mum in the world. She was a mum that you'd imagine. She was this amazing woman who did everything and did crafts, and the kind of mum that I'd aspire to be. That I think, how did you do that? Because it's being a mum now, it's exhausting. And how she did crafts and took us out and did dinner, and I take my hat off to her. And he was left with this girl who he didn't know how to parent, and who had lost her mum. He'd lost his wife. It was just awful for everyone. And I think there was a lot of anger from everyone. And our family didn't pull together like some families do in death. I think some families gather around each other and they support each other. Our family broke, and we didn't have many people around us. We we didn't have much support. And so it was just us. Then my friend, who I spent a lot of time with, moved to France with her family, and they'd been a massive part of my life. Her mum had taken me to the hospital, and they just, the year after Mum died, moved to France. It was another loss of, oh my goodness, someone else has gone. And it was a really, really hard time. I just remember being young and not really being happy. I don't remember my childhood. Some of it I actually don't remember, and things will crop up in my head that I remember. And it was just a really traumatic time. I think my dad made some choices that weren't right, and it led to a lot of pain for everyone. And I had social workers involved and people involved in my life, and in meetings. And one day he said, "I don't want her." And I remember that hit me like a ton of bricks. I remember thinking, no one does. Like, no one wants me. I'm not welcome anywhere. I didn't feel happy in school. I didn't feel happy at home. I was just so angry at life. And I was in about middle school by this point, and I was meeting with these social workers. I was so unhappy at home, and they said that they were going to take me out of the home. So I moved in with one of my mum's friends, and who also went to church. And in that time before, when my mum died, I do remember going to church, and I remember going to Sunday school, and people would be nice, and I think they felt sorry for me and us. And I remember going to Sunday school, and they were quite old ladies who ran it, and I thought, this is so boring. Why am I here? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this school. It was in the school. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to hear about it. And I was actually quite embarrassed when I was at school, thinking, I hope no one says that I was there on Sunday, because that's embarrassing. So I remember not having a very positive view. They were quite old people. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but at the time of being young, this wasn't cool. This was not fun for me. And I didn't really enjoy it. So anyway, I was at middle school, and I just moved in with someone else, and that was a really weird feeling of, I was out of this really unhappy environment in somewhere where I wasn't always safe, but I was all alone again, and I felt all alone, and I felt again like I was not it's not that I wasn't welcome, but I was imposing. I was constantly in my life in the way, I felt, or I wasn't welcome there, or it wasn't my home. I was imposing on them. I was an imposter. Like, I was just there, and I thought, why am I here? And I can't quite remember, to be honest, whether it was at that, when I'd moved out, or slightly just before, but I think it was when I'd gone. I went round a friend's house, and I was probably about 11, and it was a newish friend. I didn't know them very long, and their mum sat me down one day, and she said, "I've got something for you." And I thought, what is it? And she gave me this brown package, and she said, "I really don't want to give it to you." But I opened it, and it was this angel. And Mum had some figures around the house of kind of women holding babies, and I don't know what they're called, but they're these little figure things. And it was one of them with an angel, and there was a card. And in the card, it said something along the lines of about my mum knowing what was going on. It said about a time when I'd been in my dad's house on my own. And I remember it, and I was sat on the bathroom floor, and I was saying, "Mum, I need you. Like, where are you?" And I was crying. And it said in this note that she was there, like she knew. And I was just thinking, what is this? Like, I had no idea. I was so young. I hadn't asked for this. And I kind of looked at the mum, and she said, "I speak to a medium." And apparently this medium said something along the lines of, "Who's Annie?" one day. And she said, "I don't know an Annie." And she said, "You do? Who's Annie?" And she said, I've got a daughter's friend called Annie." And yes, I'm sending you something. And it was all this really weird thing that I was being told, and I'm like, what is a medium? I don't know what a medium is. I was literally 10 or 11, maybe 12. I don't think, I can't, it was just manic. And I had this angel figure. I had this letter about things that no one could have known. No one could have known this, because no one heard. No one knew the thoughts in my head. It was from my mum. That's what I was being told. This was from my mum, who's dead. And that's a really confusing concept for anyone at any age, let alone being so young and be in this really traumatic kind of place. So I took it back, and it was when I was at the friend's house, because I remember putting it under my bed when I was there. And I remember going into school the next day, and it would be in my bag. And I thought I was going mad. I really thought I was going mad. And I'm like, I must put it in my bag. Like, I just didn't know what was going on. But I started to feel quite scared, because I felt like I was smelling my mum when I was walking. I felt like, I just don't know what I was feeling. And I just knew it wasn't right, and it wasn't okay. And I just started to slowly feel worse and worse and worse. And I started really significantly self-harming. I started wanting to die. I started just having this complete and utter rock bottom self-esteem. I got put on antidepressants at 11, so it must have been around that time. And that was a really young age to be put on it. And I remember seeing doctors and things later on, and them looking at my notes and going, oh my goodness, that's really young. And now they don't really do that. But I just wanted to die. I was just this little 11-year-old who didn't want to be here. I wanted to be dead. I just thought it'd be easier. I'll be with my mum. Like, I just didn't want to be here. And looking back, it's really heartbreaking. It breaks my heart for that person, because I think I have managed to almost distance myself from that and separate it to a degree. But it breaks my heart looking at 11-year-olds we have in our lives and thinking, you wanted to die. It's so sad. But I didn't feel 11. I just felt alone, and I don't know. I just felt so lonely and abandoned, and I was angry, and I wanted to die. And I took this one day. I told, and it was a long time really. I think I had this for, and I told my brother about this thing that happened. And I didn't tell anyone, because I think I was told not to, but I can't remember. But I just didn't. I didn't tell anyone. And one day I told my brother, and they were Christian, and they took it quite seriously. And I didn't know they were going to do that. They took it very seriously. And they got it, and they said, bring it. And we went round to a house, and a pastor came, and I stood in the middle of these people who I knew, kind of, who were obviously members of the church, and they all gathered round me in the middle. And I remember peeking my eyes open and thinking, what is going on? They're all gathered round me. Like, it was just, I thought, what's happening? I think I just was scared, was freaked out, was thinking these people are crazy. Like, what's the big deal here? And they smashed it, burnt it, got rid of it, whatever they did, and said, this isn't good. This isn't from God. And I was like, okay. I didn't have a clue what was going on, to be honest, back then. But things were really dark. I was, like I say, I was just angry. I was self-harming in my sleep. I was waking up with blood on me, and it was just scary. And in that time, that friend who I was living with, one day I came home, and she'd packed my bags and said, you can't live here anymore. You're going home. You remind me of your mum. And my dad picked me up in his car, and I thought, oh, okay. And I remember thinking, what have I done wrong? What's happened? Like, what have I done? So I thought I'd been quite good there. And that was their stuff, and that they were hurting. But at the time, as a child, it's really hard to see what the adults around you are feeling, because you're a child. and you expect adults to be adults and know everything. As a child, grown-ups know everything, and they should in your head. And now I can reflect, but at the time I felt like everyone was against me. Again, abandonment, no one wanted me. And I went home, and then I went into school the next day, and soon I got put into a proper foster care placement. And I remember them, you know, at one point I had nothing in my room. They wouldn't let me have anything in my bedroom because I was self-harming. And I'd come home one day and they said, "We found a nail in your bed." And I said, "I promise you it's not mine. I promise you it's not mine." And I was so scared all the time. And I was in this room with nothing but a bed. I wasn't allowed my clothes. I wasn't allowed a pencil. I wasn't allowed anything in this bedroom apart from myself. And it's lonely. It's really, really lonely. And I was self-harming. But then I would look at the self-harm and be disgusted with myself and want to die. And I tried to kill myself multiple times when I was young because I just didn't want to be here. I saw doctors, I saw psychiatrists, I saw everyone. I had therapy. I had a charity who was really great, but they said that they couldn't see me because my pain wasn't solely about my mum. It was also about my home life. And they said, "We're only really here for grief." And I remember thinking, when you're in grief, your home life's messing up too, because you've lost somebody really significant. How do they not interlink? But it didn't interlink. So then the next person I'd see would refer me back to someone who was solely for grief. And I was just passed around like this hot potato in every single aspect of my life. School was scared. Not of me, but they were scared of my situation. No one felt safe in my situation, and I could sense that, and I didn't feel safe either. And that really escalated that for me because adults didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe, so I really, really wasn't safe. So things were just really horrible and bad, and I just thought, this is never, ever, ever going to end. I just don't want to be here. And my brothers were Christian, and they'd, you know, my brother and his wife would say, "Come to church." And I did a few times, and I hated it. I was so angry. And I looked at these people, and I looked around at all these happy people with families, and these people with their hands up praying and singing, thinking, what are you happy about? Why are you happy? Because my world had stopped. And I had to learn that everyone else's didn't, that the world still carried on. And that was so hard because I just wanted to scream, "Can you not see what's going on for me?" But of course the world carries on. But at this age, being so young, I didn't understand. I didn't understand why. I didn't even understand why my brother was happy. Because I'm like, why are you happy? I was almost angry at him for being happy. And that sounds mean, but that is how I felt. And I got invited to a Christian festival at one point, and I think they told me it was something similar to Radio 1 and you'll love it. And I thought, right, I've got nothing to lose. I'm not happy anyway. And I turned up and it's this heavily Christian place, and again, there's loads of people, and it was, you know, it was fun. It was, for a normal child, it was probably great. But I just, again, didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I wasn't really happy. Wasn't in the right place at all. I was going to these big meetings with big singing and stuff. And the person on the stage would say things. And he said, "I feel like God's telling me there's people here who are self-harming." And some people might say, "Oh my goodness, like that was for you." No, it wasn't for me. I didn't feel like that was for me because about 1,000 people stood up. So I thought, he's probably just going to say self-harm, depression, anxiety, domestic abuse, anything that's bad, because there's probably someone in that room who felt it. And that was my attitude. It was, "You're all crazy. How can you believe in God? How is he good?" Everything I'd learned at school in RE about God being all-knowing, all-loving, all-caring, omnibenevolent, all those kind of things didn't add up. Because if he was all-knowing, why did he let my mum die? Because he knew what was going to happen. If he was all loving, he didn't love me. And all these things and all these things you hear didn't add up. And I would just thought, you're crazy. And I was so angry at anyone and anything, and had arguments with people because I was cross and I was hurting. And I probably didn't want anyone to feel happy because I wasn't. And that is maybe how I felt. But I think when you're in that deep, dark depression, that is how you feel. And I remember kind of towards the end, I'd got the gist of what this festival camp was like. And I knew the gist. And there was one song that I kind of liked. And I thought, I don't mind this one. And I said in my head, and I was by myself, I think I'd been upset or something. And I remember standing there and I said, all right, if you're real, play this song again. Because I knew they didn't do that. I knew they didn't really play songs twice. And they said, I really feel like God's telling me to play this song again. And they played it again. And I thought, no, like this isn't true. They've just done that. Like even that, which might sound like a really amazing thing, I thought, no, it's just a coincidence. And it's so easy to say that, isn't it? Then I started taking drugs, which actually, around that time, I stopped self-harming. But looking back, I moved to a different form of self-harm. And this was how I got by. This was how I managed life, was just constantly being high. And lots of things happened in school. I was high in all my exams, all my GCSEs, I was high. And I should have done a lot better than I did, but I managed to pass. And yeah, I was just alive, but I don't know why, and I don't know what I was doing. Went to college, and my things had really broken down with my dad again, and he was a bit unwell, and he wanted me to care for him. He wanted me to get him dressed and do stuff for him, and I didn't really want to, because I didn't feel like I owed it to him, and that's really mean now. But at the time, I thought, no, I don't have this relationship with you. You've never apologised to me. You've done a lot of really horrible stuff to me. You've really, in a way, I saw it as you've ruined my life. I don't want to care for you. I don't have any part of me that wants to care for you. Get the people to care for you who you cared for. That's how I felt. And he said, we'll get out there. And I did. I packed my bag and I left. And he didn't really care at the time. He didn't. And I turned up at college and with a bag, and I didn't have anywhere to go, and I told the college, and they were like, oh my goodness. And they were nice and things. And I stayed on my friend's sofa for quite a few months, and they let me stay there, which was really, really kind. I carried on doing what I was doing. And I needed somewhere to go, and I didn't really have anywhere. And one day, again, my brother called me and said his sister-in-law has a room, and they want to know if you want to rent this room. And I remember thinking, oh, okay. I didn't really have any money, but okay. I went to the housing office or council building and had to declare that I was estranged, and they gave me housing benefits. So I had this, and I kind of was like, okay. And he said to me on the phone, there's one rule, what they're worried about: no drinking, no alcohol, no drugs, or something. No smoking, no drinking, no drugs. And I remember thinking, oh no, like I can't do that. That's me. But at the same time, I had no other choice. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. And I was terrified again, because not only was I was going somewhere and I knew her, but I didn't know her very well. I had to give up this life this was keeping me going. This was what I was living for. And I had to give that up. But I had no choice. So I did. And I went, and I was in this room, and they were really nice. And that was the first place I've ever felt free, because she didn't micromanage me. She didn't want to know where I was at all times. She just loved me and gave me somewhere to be, and treated me quite as an adult. And I was about 16, 17, but she treated me like how I had been living my whole life, because I've lived independently for a really long time. And I started to feel free, and they were Christians, and they had 2 young children, and they'd let me into this home, and I respected it. I did respect that. But still, I did feel like an imposter. I don't belong here. This isn't my family. I'm again an addition to somebody else's family. Constantly, that's what I was. Even when I was really close to people, I was always an addition on. So when I was at family events, I often found it hard with other people's families because I'm there, but I knew I wasn't really part of it. Even though they would have, I don't think anyone else maybe felt like that. They probably really wanted me to feel welcome. I wasn't really, I didn't feel part of it. I was an outsider everywhere. And I did feel that here, but I started really feeling free and thriving, and I did stop doing drugs. And I don't really know how, to be honest with you. I don't know how, but I did. Because I knew I had to be there. So I carried on, and for one, this was when I started to be happy. I was actually happy. And they invited me to church. And I remember going, and I'd squeeze in the back, and I'd go to this church. And again, that I felt unhappy straight away. I felt straight away so unhappy in this church, in the building. I felt like I was being strangled. And I felt like I was gonna be sick. I felt so angry. Like this anger just poured out of me every time I'd walk into the church. I could feel it in my neck. I could feel it in my body. I didn't want to be there. And I was just horrible. I just everything in my head in that time was horrible. I thought, you're all horrible. I don't like any of you. Get out. Get me out of here. And I would run away. And I remember once literally getting on the bus and going and thinking, I never want to go back here. But I also remember thinking, this isn't normal. This isn't a normal response to just walk into somewhere I don't like. I physically, it was like something in me was repelling it like a magnet. Like it was so strong. I was like, get me out, get me out. Something was just not right. And one day I thought, right, I'm going to go talk to someone about this. So I messaged someone who had been, knew me, knew my family. I didn't know them well. I'd probably never been round there. And I went round to his house, and he was a leader of a church. And I went round and I said, look, when I go into churches, this is happening. When I think about God, I'm angry. But when I go into a church or when I'm near it, I literally want to run away. I'm feeling this intense feeling. I've had all this go on. I still had, although I say I was happy, I probably wasn't happy because I was still on antidepressants and I would stop taking them and hit these extreme lows. So I was the happiest I've been, but looking back now, it's not happy really. So I talked this all through to him and he said, I think there's a spiritual battle going on. And I kind of been told this before, but I didn't really know what that meant. I don't know. When people talk to me about God, I'd kick off and say, how dare you? People tried to explain things to me. I'd debate with people about God who were Christians, but I wasn't ready. I was not in that place to hear it. I didn't want to hear it because I was angry. How dare you? That's where I was. So he said to me, can I pray for you? And I thought, okay, yeah, you can. You can. So he prayed for me and I was shaking, I was retching, I was like being sick. It was just the weirdest thing. And I was like, and he was like, you okay? And I was like, yeah. And then I left. And again, I didn't have this kind of like massive feeling, but I thought this is weird. Something's going on. I felt a bit different. I didn't really feel different when I went into a church, but I kind of thought, there's some sort of spiritual battle. There's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but something's going on. So I carried on again and I just carried on living. And this kind of kept happening and I just pushed God away. Like I didn't need it. I didn't need those feelings because I was starting to feel a bit better. So every time I thought of God or anything like that, it really brought everything up and it made me so cross. And why do I need that? I'm trying to get better here. I'm really trying to improve my life. I'm trying to do well. I remember saying, I want to have a job. I want to be successful. I want to change the system. That's what I wanted to do because I had quite a negative experience of social care and my social worker and just life. I thought, I'm going to change this. Like I had this big dream and I wanted to get there. I was doing psychology. I was doing sociology. I was putting the world to right in my head. Like I was just being me, and I thought, I'm going to be something. I changed a little bit to, I am going to make something of myself. So I carried on, and I met Jacob, who I'd known at school. So I saw him on a night out at the pub, and he came up to me, and we were chatting, and I was happy, like I say, to a degree. I was happiest I'd been. And we're chatting, and he kept asking me out and stuff. And I said, all right, fine, we'll go. And that night we sat and talked for ages, and people coming up to us going, you make such an amazing couple. I think someone even said, like, you guys should get married. Like, it was everyone, we were like, no, we're not a couple, no way. But we really talked, and we really connected, and we started kind of dating and things, and going out, and got into a relationship. And it was my first ever healthy relationship. It was my first relationship that I'd been in where I was happy and I wasn't relying on him to make me happy, because I'd had kind of boyfriends in the past where I needed something from them, and I was getting something from them, whatever that was kind of feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling valued, their family. I had these things. I didn't really like them, but I needed something. So Jacob was like my first healthy situation, and we just connected. I can't explain it, and we kind of fell in love really quickly. And I fell pregnant, and I was on the pill, and at the time I was taking that religiously, and that was the only thing at the time I was religious about, was this. And I was taking it, and I got pregnant, and I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And at the time I was working for my sister-in-law's business, and I just didn't know what to do. And I told Jacob, and he was like, okay, like, fine. He was shocked, but he reacted well. He said, what do we do? And I said, I don't know. Really, I don't know what we do. And I just felt like we were kind of being told, well, you can't be parents. You can't have a baby. We were 18. And I went into work, and we sat down for our little morning meeting, and they said, are you okay? And I think I just broke down in tears. And my sister-in-law said, do you not want to work for us anymore? And I was like, no, that's not it. I'm pregnant. And again, she met me with, okay, like, this is fine. This is good. It was kind of like a good thing. And I was quite shocked about that, but she was fine, and she took me into her room and loved me and nurtured me and said, this is going to be okay. And said, we've got to tell your brother. And I thought, no, I can't tell him. And again, we came in, and we're in the kitchen, and we said, we've got something to tell you. And I think he was kind of joking, but he went, oh, are you stealing from us? And I was like, no, like, what do you think of me? And I said I was pregnant, and they just loved me, and they didn't judge me one bit. They just loved me and said, okay, like, this is what's happened. This is what what do you want to do? They didn't even say, what do you want to do? They just accepted it. They completely accepted it of me. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, because I'd been worried about this, that no one would accept me. I was already not really accepted in life. And they were accepting me. And I thought, okay. And I knew deep down the whole time, this was right. I want this baby. But the world was telling me, no, you can't have a baby. Like, the expectation was from a lot of people, well, you're going to get rid of it surely. And we explored all of our options. We did. But I couldn't even hear it. I couldn't even listen to what they were going to say about not keeping it. And I had a scan really, really early on, and it was this tiny little bean on the scan. It didn't look anything like a baby, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of love. It just poured out of me, and I was like, I love this little bean so much. And I said to Jacob, I want to keep this baby, and I don't mind if you don't want to. If you can't be here, I'm going to do this on my own. And I remember saying to him, you can do what you want, but one thing you can't do is walk in and out of its life. That's one thing. You can be as involved or not. And he just said, I'm going to be involved. you know, he took his stance and said, no, I want to be involved. If we do this together. I'm going to be a dad. And we just said, okay. So we were then going to have this baby. And it was scary. It was a massive, massive journey. I didn't know what was going on a lot of the time. My friends were shocked. You know, it was a big thing. And I was pregnant with this baby. And it was crazy. And I've missed out a little chunk of the story here. But when I'd moved in to my friends, my sister-in-law's sister is who it was, where I'd lived, where I was renting this room, I went back home to my dad, not to move, but to go see him. And we had a conversation, and we had many conversations that ended in rows, but I wanted an apology. I really, really wanted him to admit to what he had done. And I kept asking for it, and he kept not giving it to me. And one day he said, I'm sorry I drank too much. And that wasn't what I wanted. That wasn't what I needed at all. That's not what I was talking about. But I chose, actually, and I really realised I'm carrying this and he's not. I'm letting this eat me up. I'm letting this abandonment, all of this pain and anger and hurt and trauma eat me up. And it's not eating him up. So I gave it back to him. And I said, this is what I felt. This is what happened for me. This is what you did. Some of it I don't think he even realised. And I said, but I forgive you. And I forgave him. And I did. And I really wanted to. And I felt lighter for doing that. And I forgave him. I didn't forget, but I forgave him. And I purely did forgive him in my heart. So he was told that I was pregnant, and we had a relationship. It wasn't a father-daughter relationship necessarily, but we had a relationship, and that was important to me. It was important to me. So everyone in our lives were quite good. Jacob's mum was a bit crazy at first, and she, you know, her son had got a girl pregnant at 18. It was quite crazy, but she came round and was really loving to me as well. And she didn't really know me, you know. It's a really odd situation, and most people thought, they're not going to do this, you know, this isn't going to go well. I know they did. I was told this. And because I'd been in care, I had a social worker ring me and want to do an assessment and things. And I remember feeling fear again that my baby was going to be taken. Something was going to happen to my baby. And it didn't. And they were like, yeah, you're cool. They didn't even do an assessment. They just let us go. And we did everything. We did all the midwife appointments. It was a great scheme for young mums. I don't really know what was different, but they were nice. They came to your house, and I was pregnant. I had a real focus, and we were happy. Again, although there was a lot through it, our friends didn't all agree or believe this was right, but this happened, and I had this baby, and giving birth was this experience that I will never forget. And my birth was considered traumatic. But to me, it wasn't. It was the most amazing experience. It gave me strength. It gave me power. It gave me this massive experience of just, I'm so strong. So we had this baby, and I'd moved in with Jacob and his mum. And I had this tiny baby. And my dad wasn't well at this point. And 6 weeks later, he died. And I remember I was meant to be going to see him. I was meant to be taking Elijah, his name is, my little boy, to see him that day. He had met him. He'd met my dad. But I was going to go see him, and in this home that he was in, but I got a call to say he died. And it was another death, but I dealt with it very differently. I was a mum to this baby. I was being a mum. I was carrying on. And it was really, really hard. It was another hard time. I was 18 with a baby with no parents. And it was, again, crazy. It was a really crazy experience because I'm focused on this baby. I'm dealing with grief. It happened to be 2 days before the anniversary of our mum's death, which is just, again, a bit odd, you know, coincidental. But it was just weird. And we had to deal with selling the family home, sorting through everything, and that was really hard because, like I said, our family was quite broken, and it was a really traumatic time. We were all just lost our mum and our dad, and at really young ages, and it was really, really tricky. But we had this baby who kind of brought a lot of peace, because everyone loves a baby. So he was really in this, and he is a massive part of our story, because Jacob and I knew he was a gift. We just knew. We didn't even really kind of think of God, but we knew he was a gift from God, and we both said it. And that was odd, because neither of us really had a faith. But I knew he was a gift from God. And I started to think about God a little bit more, and I started to realise I'm really angry at God. I'm really, really angry. I hate him. But to feel this emotion, I must believe in him. Because if I didn't, why am I angry at him? I just accept it as reality. So I had to kind of process that, because I kind of started to realise, well, maybe I do believe in him. I'm just cross with him. I'm really, really cross. So I started to kind of think about it, and then being a mum took over, and COVID hit, and had another baby. And this one, it was really different. It was really a happy experience, and I loved that as well, because, you know, I had 2 boys, and I was a mum, and I had a family. I had this family that had been talked about all the time. And I had it, and it was great, and I was happy, and I was in love, and I loved my babies, and I was a mum. But it hurt again. I was in pain again. It wasn't this magical thing, because I needed my mum. I needed help. I needed someone to ring. I felt unhappy at times after. It wasn't postnatal depression. It wasn't towards the babies, but my depression at the time, the depression I was experiencing, kind of came back a little bit. I'd say it kind of opened it up, and that was hard. And I was anxious. I was really anxious, and I haven't really said, but I suffered with anxiety my whole life, with panic attacks and just being anxious about everything, which kind of linked into my self-esteem at the time. So it was hard. It wasn't all rainbows. It wasn't this whole, when you've had a baby, you'll be okay. Yes, that love had been filled a little bit. I was feeling that maternal love. I had a form of maternal love, but the hole was still there massively. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. But at the same time, I was really, really happy. So it was a real conflict again. And I think there's been a lot of conflict in my life. So then we were invited to church. COVID had kind of gone. And we were invited to church by my brother again, and his wife and his family and his children. And me and Jacob said, okay. I said, let's go. And we went to this church, and it was nothing special. It was around the corner from where we lived. And we went in, and I didn't want to run away. I didn't want to shout at anyone. I didn't feel this overwhelming repellent. I felt all right about it. And we sat at the back, and I felt uncomfortable, and I didn't really like it. I wasn't like, oh, this is amazing. I've got this massive sense of peace. I just felt all right enough. It was bearable. But the kids kind of enjoyed it, and it was nice. We saw my brother and his wife and the kids, and it was fine, and people were nice. And I thought there's something a little bit different about this church. And around this time, it sounds really silly, but Elijah must have been about 2 maybe, and there was a Justin Bieber album out, right? And it had been on when people had been around the house, helping me with the babies and cleaning and stuff, and they'd had this Justin Bieber album on, and I thought, this is all right, this is quite cool. But it was a Christian album, and I kind of knew it was, but I liked it, so I listened to it, and I have it on in the car, and every single day the only song that Elijah wanted to listen to, and the only song that would make him happy in the car, was, I can't remember the real name of the song, but all it basically says is, "There's nobody like you, Jesus." And he would say to me every single day, "No one like you, Jesus." Every day. So every day in the car, we're listening to this song about Jesus. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm singing it, and I'm listening to this music, and music really resonated with me. Music made me feel things. And in my car, I was like, wow, okay. And Elijah loved church. He wanted to talk about church. He wanted to go to church. And he wanted this "Nobody Like You, Jesus" song on. And he'd sing it every day. And I thought, wow, this is really special. And I knew he was special. I knew he was a gift. And I knew that we should carry on going to church. And then we got invited on an Alpha course at this church. And I'd done Alpha courses before. I don't know if I'd ever seen one through, but I'd done bits. But again, come away fuming, angry, annoyed, wound up, never want to go there again, aggressive. This kind of animal of just, I don't even know, but someone that you would think was crazy, because I hated it. I'd argue with them. People really thought she is horrible, because maybe they didn't, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So anyway, and Jacob and I were going to do it together, and our family facilitated the children to look after the children so that we could go to this Alpha course together. So we went to this Alpha course, and it wasn't like other Alpha courses I'd been to. Some Alpha courses I'd been to had a meal and it was really professional. This wasn't. This was in a room. It was with a few people. It wasn't that busy, and it was kind of so simple. And there wasn't loads of young people. It wasn't like hip at all. It wasn't cool, but it was lovely. It was just, I felt okay. I felt safe. And we did this Alpha course. And through this Alpha course, I'd heard some of it before. I knew a lot of it because I had researched God. I'd researched into my argument of why it's not kind of trying. Not properly, but I had. And I knew the answers of what people said. I could almost convince you to be a Christian because I'd had these conversations with people trying to convince me to be a Christian. So I knew it, I just didn't want it. I didn't want to believe it. So there we are, and we're in it, and we're going for it. And one time I did feel, it was the one about, it wasn't that late on. I don't know what it was about, the Alpha, but I suddenly thought I need to get out of here. And I got that feeling in my neck again. And I was like, I just want to get out. And I was crying. And I just needed to get away. And someone came out, and I told them, I just said what my life had kind of looked like. And she was like, you need prayer. Like, you really need prayer. Because I was still struggling. I wanted to be there, but I was struggling with all this. So I'm in there, and we're doing it. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll have some prayer, whatever. And we were going away, and I started to think about God. And at this point, I wanted a job. And I thought, I need to be more than a mum. I'm feeling a bit stale. I want to be called something other than mummy. My brain's going, I just felt like it was going to make me a better mum, and it did. But I didn't really know what that was going to look like. We had no family really to support. A lot of my friends who were mums had their mums look after their children and all this, and we didn't. So I thought, okay, how is this going to work? So I prayed. I thought, okay, I'm going to pray. I'm going to start praying. And my praying wasn't, dear God, on my hands and knees. It was when I was in the car listening to this music, worship music, and I just talked to him like he was there. And that was what my prayer, that's still really what my praying looks like, to be honest. That's where I most often pray, is in my car and when I'm driving around. And I just said, okay, like, this is what I want to do. And me and Jacob were talking about it one night, and we were talking about what I'd need to earn or something. It was something, and we came up with this really specific number. I don't know if it was for our kind of what we wanted to move or what. And we searched up jobs of the kind of field I wanted to be in. And the first one that was up was that exact number that we'd said we needed, the exact number. And I was like, that's strange. And it ended that night, and it was probably about 10 o'clock, and it ended at midnight. And Jacob said, just apply. And I said, no, I've got nothing. I've got no skills, nothing. And I applied. We wrote it on notes on my phone, and we applied for this job, and we went. And I went to see the pastor of the church, and I was talking to her, and I told her my whole life, because at church I felt dirty. I felt like all these people are perfect and pure and Christian, and I'm here and I'm not. I'm dirty, and I know bad. I started to realise that I knew the enemy. I knew the enemy was real. And that's when I realised where there's bad, there must be good, because I really knew that. But I knew that I had some really dark stuff around me. I started to kind of know a bit more about the enemy, and I know we don't want to give him time or anything, But he had been or was in my life at this point. He had a hold on me. Something demonic was with me, and I started to really see that and notice that. And I think maybe I'd known it before. So she prayed with me, and nothing really happened. But she said to me, "You're not grounded. You're not rooted. You need to root yourself." This is she was really nice. And she even said, maybe you should talk to someone. And I thought, she's not just saying, it wasn't a cult. It didn't feel like a cult. It was really nice, genuine, the most lovely person. She was just amazing. And she said to me, "What you're doing, what you're living is exhausting." And I was like, I am exhausted, because I just was juggling all this stuff all at once and trying to be amazing, trying to be a good mum, trying to be a good girlfriend, trying to just be all the time this person like on one of those hamster wheels. And she said, "Let God take the driving seat." And I was like, no way. And I went away and I thought, okay, I'll let you take the driving seat on my job, on my work, because I don't have that yet. So I'll let you take the wheel with that. That's all I'm going to give you. Anyway, so then I got an interview for this job. I thought they must have that wrong, because it was honestly, just me writing. And I got an interview for this job, and I did the interview, and at the end, and I talked about some volunteering I'd done, because I had volunteered with people. They were kind of people I knew, or friends of friends, but supporting them in situations. So I had done that. But they said to me at the end, "Oh, can we just ask who you volunteered with?" And I said, "Oh, well, no, it wasn't really kind of like that." And they said, "Oh, I'm not sure we can accept you," kind of thing. And I said, "Okay." And half an hour later, he rang me and said, "We want to offer you the job." And again, I was like, what? It just was completely different. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, "But the thing is," I don't know if it was right then. No, I accepted it then. Anyway, and then I was looking at it and I thought, I don't want a full-time job. I don't want these full-time hours. No, I don't want that. But that's what had been offered at. And I think I said to him on the phone, I'm not sure I want full-time. And he said, "No, that is all it is." So again, I prayed about it and said, okay, what should I do? This is down to you, kind of thing. Literally just giving it to him. I didn't ask for anything. I just said, what's going on? Then when it was around Christmas, and I came back and they said, "All right, we'll offer you part-time." And again, I thought, and I started to know this isn't coincidence. This can't be. It's stupid to think this is coincidence. Some people say it is, but it's not. These things just don't happen. And I forget all of them. I should really write them all down. But all these things started happening, and the childcare fell into place, and everything fell into place with this job. And I continued doing Alpha. And then me and Jacob were having a conversation one night about God and about life, and it was just me and him at home, and the children were in bed. And Jacob's dad ended his own life, and we were talking about him, and we were just saying, is he in heaven? Where is he? That's a really hard concept to come to terms to deal with his grief, is where is he? Because I think it says, and I'm quite a new Christian, so I don't know all the Bible, but I think it might say something about it being a sin or something. I don't know. But I knew it. I didn't know. I really didn't know. Did he know God? I don't know. What we don't know what he said in his last few hours. We don't know anything. And that's a really hard concept. We just were having a conversation about it, and we prayed. And that was the first time we prayed together. And I prayed for him. And I didn't want to. I didn't really like doing that, but I did. I felt awkward and uncomfortable, but we did it. And then we went to Alpha that week. And Jacob started opening up, and he said something along the lines of, and there was a man there this week who hadn't been there before. And he said something along the lines, Jacob was saying something along the lines of, "I find it really hard because my dad killed himself." And this man, that's all he'd said. And this man was like, "You're all deluded," and started just throwing abuse at him, like this massive attack. And this was when Jacob had first started opening up, and he's just going mad at him. So the people in our group rushed us off into this little room, and they prayed. They gathered around us and they prayed. That's what they did. That's how they dealt with that. And they just started praying for Jacob, and they were just really, really praying. And one lady said, "I just really feel like God's telling me to tell you that your dad is in heaven. And I was just crying because I thought, how does she know? Like, this is all starting to become really real, because you can say things are coincidences, but things like that, why would that happen? How can you explain that through a coincidence? It's a very odd, unrealistic coincidence. So I really started to know. I was like, this is real. And we did Alpha, we completed Alpha, and I was quite there. Like, I felt like, yeah, I have a faith. I believe in God. And we were going to church, but you are then just left. So then we were just left in this kind of believing in God. I was listening to music. I was trying to read things. I find the Bible really hard to read. I'll be really honest. I don't make enough time for it, and that's something I really am trying to do. But I just didn't really know. And again, this spiritual attack was coming. And me and Jacob were arguing, and it was just this massive spiritual attack on my mental health again. And I really wanted to know God. I knew he was good, but this mental health was just coming in. And the closer I was trying to get to God, the more this was coming in. And I just thought, no, this is too hard. This is too hard, because what's the point when I was actually doing fine, but now it's getting harder because I'm drawing closer to God, and I knew about this spiritual battle, and it was just felt like, this is exhausting, I can't. And I just hit rock bottom, like massively rock bottom. And I just wasn't okay. I just really wasn't okay. And things would go okay, and then they weren't, and my job was good and things were good, but I just wasn't. This spiritual battle was just happening, and I'd go into church and I'd cry. Every single time I'd cry. I knew that was some kind of healing, but it was just really, really hard. And I didn't know where to go, really. I didn't really know what to do. And something that had happened in Alpha, one of the things I was really struggling with was I didn't want to give God the glory. I didn't want to, because I'd got to where I was. He hadn't got me there. I'd got there. I was really selfish in it, and I didn't want to. No. He might be real, but I've got to where I am today on my own. And I almost was kind of like, I'm strong and I'm independent. And that's what you're told to be, a strong, independent woman. And the world feeds you that. And I thought, why do I want him to, no, he didn't get me here. And some of the songs, you've always been there for me. And I can't think of specific lines, but I hear them even now. And I think, do I feel that? And I didn't feel that. Looking back, he probably was always there. I didn't see him. But it doesn't feel like he scooped me up and walked with me. It was I do believe he was there, but it was a very gentle walk. And he did let me do it. I do think that. But he was there, I think, choosing the paths, choosing certain things. But it didn't feel like he was there. So I remember saying, I don't want to give him that glory. And the guy that led our group still laughs about it now, because I was so adamant. No, I'm not giving you that. And I started re-listening to songs, and people around me would send me music. And there was a song called Take It to Jesus that really spoke to me. And it basically said, all your broken, all your everything, take it to him. So I did. And I said, I'm really angry with you. I'm really, really angry. And I don't like you very much sometimes. I don't understand why this has happened, why you've let all of this happen to me, because that is how it felt. He'd let all of this hurt, all of this pain, all of this trauma happen. Why? Why are you doing this? Why? I know you're real, I know you're good, but I'm cross, I'm angry. And he was like, all right. Like, I really felt like him go, okay. And he wasn't like, oh, how dare you? It was like, I know. He knew. And I was like, oh, this is the first person to feel safe. Not person, but this was the first person to feel safe with this stuff. And I didn't hear it as an audible voice. I don't know how I hear God, but I hear him, and I felt him say, okay, I hear you, I know. That's okay. And I was like, oh. And I started to feel safer in this emotion, because I told him. I wasn't hiding it from him. I I wasn't pretending, because part of me was pretending, oh yeah, God's good. But deep down I was like, God's not good. I don't know if God's good. I don't know this. So I really started to give it to him. And, you know, they talk about forgiveness in Alpha, and I'd forgiven my dad. And I started to really believe, and I really like the concept of Christianity anyway. It is a nice concept, whether you have a faith, forgiving, being kind, you know, all the rooted values in Christianity is a nice way to live. So, and I really like the thought at one point that my mum was in heaven. You know, that's a nice thought as well. So again, I know God's real. I know that things are happening, but I'm also kind of just still living my life. So I'm in this really odd place of just plodding and kind of moving. And it was very gentle, very slow, to be honest. It wasn't, you hear stories about people walking somewhere one day and they have prayer and they fall to the floor and this stuff's taken. And I think, wow, you know, and I'd heard that before. I'd heard that at these Christian festivals and camps. And that wasn't happening to me. So part of me was a bit like, oh, you know, I'm not worthy still. Because not often did I hear stories about it taking a really long time. And so it was this really gentle thing, and there was ups and downs, but I was praying and I was talking to God, telling him, what do you want? You know, really, really trying to build a relationship. And that's what I did first. I built a relationship. I wouldn't say I was a Christian. I wouldn't say I was religious. I'd say I built a relationship with God, and it wasn't at first probably the strongest relationship at all, because I was cross, and every time I'd go to church I'd cry and I'd let this out, but I'd feel a bit better. And then I started to just really see spiritual things. I'd start to feel spiritual things. I started to feel when I didn't feel like things were right, and I really kind of knew that God was better, and I'd start to pray in these situations. And I went to Becca and talked to her about this again, who was the pastor of the church, and we talked about everything, and I told her the truth, and I said, I really feel dirty. I feel really, really dirty, and I feel not good enough to be a Christian, not with God, but with other Christians. I felt it in a way, maybe with God, but I didn't want anyone really to know me. I thought if they knew about me back then, they wouldn't be talking to me. They wouldn't be inviting me around their house for dinner. And I wasn't the same. I'm still, to this day, I'm outspoken. I say the wrong thing. I'm not a perfect Christian. I'm really not. I say things that maybe I shouldn't, and I make mistakes, and I'm fiery. I'm really, really fiery. And I'm nice, but I see these people as being so lovely and nice, and I'm like, wow, and I'm really in awe of them, and that's not me. It's not. I'm a nice person, but I'm different. And I talked to her about this, but at the same time I felt really dirty, and those feelings of being not worthy, all those feelings from my childhood of the abandonment, of feeling not good enough, all of that was there still, really strong, and I could see it in my relationship. I was really showing these cracks of being scared and being fearful and running away from things and not facing things, and our marriage wasn't great. I was angry with Jacob at times, and I'd push him away, or I'd run away, or I could really see these cracks in our relationship that were coming from my trauma, coming from my early childhood and my kind of life, because I didn't really know what it felt like to be loved. I didn't really know. So we had to develop that, and I talked to Becca about all this, and she really prayed for me. And it wasn't, you know, in tongues and aggressive prayer, nothing like that. It was just a normal prayer. She just kept praying really gently, kind of like this. And I'm just there, allowing this prayer, and I just felt the Holy Spirit. And I had kind of felt it before, but not massively. I knew when I was crying it was the Holy Spirit. I did know that, but I started feeling it. And I could just see black tar being pulled off me one by one. And I was just letting it go. I wasn't holding on to it, because I was still holding on to all of this stuff, I think. My hurt, my trauma, my self-harm. It was mine. I felt like self-harm was mine. Even though I wasn't doing it, I still held on to it. I couldn't really talk about it with people because I was a bit scared that someone else had that. I was like, oh, if I knew someone else was self-harming, I'd compare and be like, I need to do that now. It was really odd. It was really unhealthy. So all these things I was holding, I just started to kind of feel I was letting go really gently, and just started to feel this peace, and this tar was just coming off me, and I just came out of it and I felt different, and I just felt this fire inside for God, and nothing dramatic had happened, but I just wanted to tell everyone because I was on this high like I'd never been on before. It was a high like no drug I'd ever taken. It was this feeling that I was like, I need more, like a drug, but the best drug you've ever been on. And I wanted more and more and more. So that got me in the spiral of I wanted to tell my friends. I wanted to tell everyone about God. All I wanted to talk about was God. And I was going into church thinking, why is no one talking about it more? You know, why are we not talking about all this stuff? I just wanted to talk all the time. And luckily I had people in my life that wanted to talk to me about it. But I was just on fire. And that's where the real, I thought, no, I'm a Christian. Like, I believe in God now. And it just went, and my life just started to change. My views on life started to change. I can't tell you why my mum died. I don't know. I really don't know. And I could try, and there's things I think of, you know, maybe. It hurts. I miss her dearly every day. I wish the children got to meet her. I wish she was here for me to ring and say, Mum, like, at my wedding, I'd love my mum to have, and my dad to have seen that. They didn't. It hurts me deeply, but I feel at peace about it. And that's the difference. I haven't gone over it. I haven't, forgotten about it, but I feel like it's okay. And it's really not okay. So in my head, it's really different to my heart in a way, because it's not really okay that she died. It's not okay what happened. But I feel quite peaceful about it because I'm trusting in God. He's got a plan. And I don't understand it. But in a way, I think take it. I've carried a lot of adult things throughout my life of worrying about stuff and caring about stuff and thinking about things for a long time. It's actually really nice to let it go and go, you know that, I'll know one day. And I feel quite at peace about that. And I'm quite a controlling person. I like to know what's going to happen. I like a plan, you know. But I don't feel that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask him one day. But it's not in a, why did you do that? It's in like, okay, tell me, talk to me. Tell me what's going on. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be who I am today without that. So maybe, you know, that could be it. But I feel in peace, and my relationship has improved since we know God, since we walk with God in that, since we pray about stuff. You know, before, when things were going wrong, I would try and deal with it, or Jacob would try and deal with it. And actually, we don't know how to deal with it, especially the extreme emotion that I was feeling and this trauma that I projected onto him. So now we pray about it. And it helps, and it works, and it's peaceful. And our marriage isn't perfect. We argue, and we, you know, some days I think, oh my goodness, you know, you're driving me up the wall. But we really love each other, and we both want to be better, and we both love God. So we're really new Christians. We're so new. But we are bringing our children up. We have had our children dedicated. We want our children to be Christians. I know that they are gifts from God. I know that God's got something amazing planned for them. And I'm just excited to know what God's got planned. I feel like there's something planned. I don't know what it is. It could be something tiny. But there's something that's happening. I've still got a long way to go. But I'm on this journey, and I'm feeling so much different. Elijah came home from school and had a problem, and it was quite an insignificant problem. He'd lost something at school. And I didn't really know what to say about it because I couldn't really do anything about it. So I said to him, should we pray about it? And he said, I already have. And that moment, I knew. I was like, yes, you know, that brought me so much joy. And it's the tiniest little thing. And, you know, and actually he'd prayed about it, and we prayed about it again. And when he went back to school, he didn't have it. But the day after, it was found. And it's so unbelievable that it was found, because it's this tiniest little thing ever, and it was found. And he ran out and he said it was found. And I said, what do we need to do? And he was like, thank you, God. And I thought, you are teaching me stuff here. And some people would say, I had a baby out of wedlock. I've sinned massively throughout my life. I still sin every day. I do. I say things that I think, I shouldn't have said that. I'm not perfect, but God doesn't judge me for that. And I know that. I'm not judged by him. Whereas I felt judged my whole life. I felt like I had to please people. I felt, not good enough. He doesn't judge me, and he accepts me for who I am, and he's using me. And, I sometimes think, what have I got to give? But when I kind of look into it more and look at the Bible more, he didn't always use perfect people. Quite often he did use people who weren't perfect, and that's who he hung out with. And I feel like, okay, I'm all right. And it's about me now. And he knew my journey before I went on it. I do think, guided my journey, even though it's not always positive. I do think he guided that. I think there's reasons all of these things happened. There was times where I could have gone a really different way, groomed and was asked to do things and stuff. But I did say no. And things did happen that I haven't really gone into, because I'd be here all night. And I've been here, I've been talking a long time anyway. But if you really delve into the specifics, it's unbelievable. How I'm here and I am who I am today, with what I've done and where I've been and the little situations I've been in. It is unbelievable. Even I don't believe it sometimes. So I think he was there on the way, and it's, I don't know what that looks like. But I know now what that looks like, and I know that it's easier for me to give it to God, and he's walking with me, and he's leading me, and he's healing me. I've had this massive healing. I've had that tar ripped off, which was incredible. I've still got things to heal. I know I have. I think, I'll heal forever. I still have days where I feel anxious, or I feel, a bit down and things, but I know how to deal with that. And Becca said to me, when you have those thoughts, tell them to get out. And she shouted out, I won't shout on here, but she really shouted it. And it sounds so simple, but it works. It really, really works. And I say, get out. You're not welcome. You're not here. You're not mine. And I will never, it used to be my self-harm, my anxiety. No, I'll never say that. I'll try not to say that, because it's not mine. I don't accept it into my life, and you can get out, you can give it back. And I speak the truth into my life, because it is the truth, and that is leading me to happiness and peace and great things. And I'm not scared anymore. I've lived my whole life in fear, and I'm not scared. Even when I'm in situations where I think, I don't know, I'm like, God's got it. And it's actually a really nice place to be. And people might think, you've had a hard life, or people have had a hard life. It's nice for them. You hear it, don't you? It's nice for them to think of God, because it helps them to process. It's not nice to think like that. It's actually really, really hard to believe in God and to follow it and to know him and to face that battle. It's hard. It's not easy, actually, at all, with the kind of things you get against you, the attacks. It's not nice to think. It's not easy. It's really, really not, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. And when you really know that feeling, I would do it again and again and again. No drug has made me feel like this. No therapy, and I think therapy is really, really important. But no therapy has healed me in the way that I have been healed. No medication has healed me in the way I've been healed. And throughout this journey, where I kind of was going to Africa, I came off my medication, and it just happened. It wasn't kind of one day I just didn't take it. It just happened, and I haven't gone back on it since. And if I needed to, I would go back on it. But right now, God's got that, and I'd been on it, 12 years, something like that. It's a long time. It's a really long time, and I never thought I'd be off it, but I am. And it's just such a better way to live. So my journey's still going. I'm a brand new born-again Christian. This isn't the end of my story. This is just the beginning. But it's just amazed me how God has moved in my life and is still accepting me in after everything, you know. So, yeah.
Just to clarify, how old are you right now, Annie?
23.
So you're a baby.
I'm a baby. Yeah.
It's an incredible, amazing story. It's just beautiful to hear how far you've come. Obviously, we know you really well. So for us, it's been years of prayer, and it's just amazing to hear you talking now about your testimony. Is just incredible, because at times we just thought, oh my gosh, Lord help us, because it was really sad. I just want to, one quick question, what is your friends' reactions now to how you've dramatically changed? I mean, your friends have probably, you're quite young, so you had friends in college, you're at that age where you've got friends around you. What's their reaction? What are they thinking about all this?
It's been a mixed response from different people. I've had people say to me, you've changed, you're different, what is this, what's going on? And people say, I need some of this, Yeah. And they know me, my friends who knew me as this kind of unhappy person who did drugs and all this, and they're looking at me thinking, wow, people have said to me, even Jacob has said to me, you are different since you know God, there's something different about you. And I am a nicer person, I am. And my friends do see that. Some of my friends think I'm crazy, they really do, but then they'll say to me, but can you pray about that? You know? So they hear it in my life.
That's really cool.
And I've got friends who've been through stuff. I do attract sometimes people with stuff going on, and I love them. I actually love people like that. I love the broken people. I love people who are in these dark places, and sometimes people say you shouldn't surround yourself with people like that, and I don't surround myself with them, but I will love them. And I just love people who are going through stuff and helping them. And I don't know where I was going with that.
It's okay.
It's that kind of feeling of, I will pray for them, because I know that's where I was going. I know the prayer that was had for me, and I know the years and years and years of prayer that it took, and how grateful I am to those people who didn't give up and were consistent and trusted God themselves, that this is going to take as long as it takes. I can do that for my friends, and lead give that, through
give
that.
Back.
Give back in that.
One more question for people that are sitting in that anger and just, it cripples you, doesn't it? Pain and depression, it's like a crippling, it's just awful. What would you say to those people that are just sitting in that pure anger? Because it's a really tough place to be. Would you have any advice for that? Because I know your journey was quite slow, but ultimately it was prayer. I think that from listening, that really was the catalyst of what changed you. But what would you say? What would you have advice for those people?
Pray. I think with that anger, it's a really unsafe place to be. It's a really unsafe and scary place. And I think, give it to him. What have you got to lose? I think when you're in that deepest, darkest place of depression, where I've been, where you just want to die, try. If you're not bothered about dying, which is where a lot of people are, where I was, why not try? And give it to him. He can handle it. No matter how angry you are, whether you're angry with him, whether you're angry with yourself, whether you're angry with people, tell him. He already knows. So once you tell him, it gives him that opportunity to step in. But if you're not going to open yourself up and open up your heart, I don't think he steps in. And I really believe that he does things at your pace. And I wasn't ready until I was ready, and he knows when you're ready, but you've got to say, okay, he's not a God who will intrude. So open up, ask for prayer, go to a church and ask for prayer. And if you're trying with God, go to another church. If that one wasn't right for you, go to another one, because, every church is different. It's not about the church, it's about God. And I think you have to remember that it's not about the Christians, it's about God. And church can sometimes look like this posh, fancy place. Everyone's in their Sunday best, everyone's amazing, and you're broken. And that's what it should be. If all you can get to church in is your pajamas because you're so unhappy that you can't even get dressed, go. That's what it is. It's that hospital. It's that place. Go.
Yeah.
Go to church and tell them you're angry. Tell them. Just ask God to show you. Ask God to tell you what to do. Ask him what to do with this anger. Pray about it. Sing about it. Listen to music. Listen to songs where they talk about it. There are songs where it's not all happy, jolly, God is amazing all the time. There's songs that talk about what you do with that pain, because he can handle that pain. You can't. He doesn't want you to carry that pain. He wants you to give it to him. He wants you to let him take the wheel with that and help you. And just anything that you feel isn't from God, or anything that you've tapped into, or anything that has managed to get in, tell it to get out. Just if that's all you can say, if you can't pray, just tell it to get out and that it's not welcome, and just pray. Just keep praying, because that is what will help. I know that's not, it's nothing special. I wish it was more, but just pray and keep praying and try.
But it doesn't matter, because that's enough.
Yeah,
that's amazing, isn't it? That is awesome. I think if you could just end on a little prayer for anyone that's listening right now to your story and something resonates with them, and they've heard your story and they're thinking, this is me. Can you just pray over those people just for us to end?
Okay. Lord, we just thank you that there's people listening to this, and we just hope that this reaches the people that needs to hear it. I pray that anyone who's feeling lonely, anyone that's feeling angry or lost or broken or unhappy or has grief, I just pray that you just meet with them. I pray that you touch them in a way that they are comfortable with and in a way that suits them. I pray that they meet somebody. I pray that someone is praying for them. I pray over them. I pray that they feel your presence, that they feel your peace, and that they know to look for you, Lord. And I just pray that they know that this feeling isn't from you and it's not okay, and that you don't want them to feel that, and that they're not alone, they're not broken, they are enough, and that you want them, and that they just feel that they are wanted, and that they should give it to you, and they should look and seek you, because you love them and you want them, no matter how broken or abandoned or dirty they feel. And I just pray that they feel the strength to do that, and that they are worthy of at least that, if that's all they feel worthy of, that they are worthy of a prayer or to ask you to meet with them, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Jesus Studio podcast. Please rate and subscribe. The testimonials and stories shared reflect the personal experiences and unique journeys of our guests. Shop our merch at jesusstudio.co.uk.